Thank you very much. I know it's been a long day, so this is the graveyard shift, and I really appreciate C Conference for inviting me and our agency to come and speak to you. Thank you to Christina and Reet and all of the speakers from today. We had a dinner last night that was very intense, but it's really good to be here with good people doing good things. So, I'm from Accept and Proceed. I wanted to just start with a couple of rules of engagement of my presentation. So it's called From Chaos to Clarity. And you can see I'm going to be taking you on a journey. At the bottom, we've got a timeline, and that will be showing you which year we're on as we go through the presentation. I've also got a friend over here. This baby screen is the WhatsApp group. So you've heard through the day that you can join the WhatsApp group. I'm going to put up the QR code one more time so that we can all join if you would like to. I'm told that the limit is 256 people, but in fact, with the QR code, apparently we can have unlimited. So let's try and break it. And this is going to be our shared community for the next hour, and who knows how long into the future. I'd really encourage you to post any thoughts, feelings, questions. I mean, this can be our friend. We can ask it questions, maybe. In fact, let's try that. How many seconds until the year 2030? Let's see if it can work that out for us. I'd like you to really engage with this, and who knows what connections and what wisdom might come from this now and into the future. The ancient Egyptians were the first to use brand guidelines. It has been said they were very, very controlling about the hieroglyphics and the way that they represented human forms, for example, the ratio of the torso to the legs and the way that specific pharaohs would have been represented and their profiles, side or left or right. We don't fully understand everything from 6,000 to 8,000 years ago, but some have speculated that this was the beginning of the material sort of worship and the material age. And here we are in 2022. A&P sees design as a continuum. We learn from the best that's been and we iterate upon it. We don't repeat. Where we've been informs where we're going. With this mindset, we think a lot about ourselves in relation to the past and the future and the world around us, global activities as well as things that we experience in our personal life. It's 7 years, 104 days until the year 2030. Doesn't look like our friend has given me the answer here just yet. So let's see, it's actually 244 million seconds roughly, which didn't seem, I mean, we should fact check that. It didn't seem like enough, considering that a lot of people seem to have $244 million or euros or pounds in the world. But still, I'm going to be going back the same aperture in time. So 7 years, 104 days into the past. I'm going to be talking about what's happened globally, what's happened in our agency, and what's happened in my personal life as well. Accept and Proceed is a creative agency based in East London. We're 15 years old. We come from all four corners of the globe. Our ancestors include Nigerian tribal chiefs and royal ballet dancers. We're a B corporation, which means that we're legally required to consider the decisions that we make and their impact on our team, our clients, our partners, and the environment. We take every other Friday off to explore and inspire ourselves. We donate 1% of our revenue every year to the planet, and we run the podcast that Peter mentioned, Endless Vital Activity, which is conversations to inspire radical action. And we're guided by our living business plan, which is an ecosystem of elements which brings harmony and balance rather than perpetual growth. So this is our agency, and I'm David, and you're going to get to know me very well over the next 45 minutes or so. Now, I'm going to move at quite a pace. I hope you like where I take you. You may not like all the way there, but I assure you we're going to go to somewhere very interesting at the end. This is what the whole day's been leading towards. As I go through the presentation, I'd like you to think about just three things. One, the interconnectedness of everything. Two, where for you does true creativity come from? And three, what's our collective agency on the world and on the future? So let's go back in time. I'd like to go to 2012 to begin with. So we set up an art gallery called 43M3. It was 43 meters cubed, and it's basically on one of the main arteries into London. It's our kind of loudspeaker to the world. And we had a lot of fun in this space. It was a research and development space, collaboration space. We collaborated with people like architect Carl Turner on a project that was based on his slip house. We also created impossible balloons with Gemma Tickle. We showcased a kinetic sculpture by Swiss artist called Simone. This was really noisy, but very, very beautiful. We also launched lots of our own projects in there, like this typeface, which was based on the grid that affected it. It basically was a typeface that was affected by the grid upon which it was built, and we created a full experience in the space there. Probably the biggest piece that we've ever created was called Spectra. It was a collaboration with Field, who actually spoke at this event last year. We've always been really fascinated by space, and the fact that NASA open sourced so much data is a complete playground for us. Spectra is a kinetic sculpture driven by open source data. So what you're seeing here is a visualization of the bespoke programming that we created. Every pinprick of light you can see there is a meteorite strike to the moon over a 10-year period from the year 2000 to the year 2010. The piece was made from circuit boards, motor modules, wire, and a big steel frame. So here it is being built. Often we're doing things that have never been before. This was a very challenging project for us, and the end result is a big floating metal space blanket. And we love the idea that really it's playing with the fact there's no gravity on the lunar surface. So the fact that it's kind of floating seems to play into that. But we also love the fact that we're giving sculptural expression to events that happen so far away. You know, it's quite weird when you think about it, quite weird and wonderful. The most important thing, obviously, about any of our self-initiated work is a big party. So every time that we launch a new piece, we have people along to our studio. We basically turn it into a nightclub for the night, and we've made great friends through that process. I think through this project, we really learned to follow our instinct, because this project directly led on to us working with NASA and the Jet Propulsion Lab, which doesn't happen. You don't really work with those guys. You'll learn how a little bit later. So what was happening in global affairs in 2014 when we were playing around with Spectra? Well, the Ebola epidemic became a global health crisis. It started in West Africa in the spring and kind of continued through the summer. There was fighting in the Ukraine and Crimea, so these border confrontations were really flashbacks to the Cold War, with Putin maintaining that Ukraine was really wanting to rejoin his homeland, and other countries seeing it as a dangerous land grab and imposing economic sanctions. Very déjà vu-y. And in 2014, it wasn't a human that made a giant leap for mankind. It was this robotic lander, which landed on a moving comet that year. So the Philae actually was set off from the Rosetta spacecraft after a 10-year journey, and here it is, and then actually sending back images from the meteorite surface, which is quite incredible when you really think about it. In my personal life, well, I'd got married shortly before this, and in 2014, here's my wife in her summer dress with her sister, who happens to be our operations director at Accept Proceed, Erica. Now, my wife had started eating a huge amount of food. This is her outside the house that we were renovating in Hackney, and I was quite concerned about her. She continued to eat and drink, and we got a baby. So this is John William Johnston in 2014, born on August the 20th. It was a remarkable moment. You kind of get to the stage in life where you think you've experienced so many things, but I was so acutely aware of all the kind of memories being laser etched into my mind through this period. The baby scan and the technology kind of used to be able to monitor my baby as it came to life was fantastic. Obviously, it's not my real baby. I'd rather actually listen to the heartbeat through Laura's tummy. But it did allow me to sort of connect in this way. And as we're talking about the flood of information, it's quite interesting to think of all the different types of data visualization. I was able to take this printout to my grandfather, David Johnston I, who was in an old people's home in Northern Ireland at this time. And he never got to meet John in person, but he was presented with this scan. I wanted to tell you just a little bit about David Johnston the first. He lived to 102, obviously, and I think one of the reasons for that was he was very intuitive. So he basically woke up every morning and asked his body what did it need. You know, if it was vitamin C, it would be orange juice. If it was oils, he might have nuts. He also practiced stretching and breathing practices, actually, before anybody had ever heard of yoga in Northern Ireland. So a very intuitive man. Now, this is back in 2014. I'd like to just try something to kind of get the energy in the room going a little bit. Now, remember, this is way before the pandemic and all the weirdness of the last couple of years. I'd like you to turn to the person next to you, if you would, and tell them what's the one thing that's transformed you most in the last 7 years. I'm going to go and speak to Umar over here just for a second. So please do turn to the person next to you and tell them, you know, if you can think about what has transformed you most in that time. Umar. Okay, thank you. Thank you. It's good to get the room talking. Sorry to stop you. Notice we are fascinated by the things that are transforming us through this time. It's not an easy conversation to stop that. So I'd like to move forward. 2015, we started working with a cycling brand called Rapha. They'd existed just 15 years up until this point. They'd really carved out in that time a whole area of cycling that just didn't exist before. So they'd built a community and a level of product, which is really a bit of a game changer. Because of the price point, they pretty much appealed to the sort of older gentleman market for the most part. I don't know if you've ever heard of Mammals, which are middle-aged men in Lycra, and that was their main audience. And part of the project that we did with them was kind of refocusing at a younger audience. But it was more than that. We were actually creating the design for the Pro Team jersey, which was to compete in the Tour de France. So for that project, we took the data from the previous year's performance from Peter Kenyuk, who is one of the riders in the Pro Team. So here you can see a data visualization which is showing out the distance, the elevation, and the stress undergone throughout that performance from the previous year. We took this data visualization and applied it to the product. So you can see Peter Kenyuk looking gorgeous in the garments, and we also applied it to various different bits to go along with the whole launch of the kit. It's interesting to think about wearing data on our skin like this. Obviously, if you have tattoos or you wear any sort of graphic design, you're basically speaking in a sort of esoteric way to the rest of the world, which is very appropriate to a cycling community. But of course, everything is a data visualization. If you think about it, when we dig up the bones of our ancestors, we can see how they lived, the nutritional content or their lives. If you cut through a tree, you can see how old it is, but not just that, the air quality during its life. There's an amazing poem by William Blake which starts, "To see the world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wild flower." So really this is all about, you know, looking at the world through different perspectives and storytelling. What we try to do with all of our work is really create, you know, different ways of seeing the content. So we created lots of moving image stings which were used in the run-up to the launch of the actual Pro Team jersey. We also created a very bespoke piece in the store in Piccadilly Circus in London. And this actually moved in response to people walking past the store. So kind of meeting where the audience where it's at is very, very important. In the garment itself, it actually told you the story, because it's all very good, you know, buying the garment, but not knowing where that graphic has actually come from means you don't really engage with the narrative of it. So I think getting smart about meeting your audience where they're already at and creating very emotional connections with them is very, very important in all of our work. You know, get smart about the way that you actually speak to the audiences. What was interesting for us about the project was we were cited as a real partner, so not just a design studio with a service providing sort of relationship. We were front and center of the project, you know, alongside and peer-to-peer with Rapha. And this is really interesting. I think that we should all learn that we should really treat all of the work that we create as if it was our name on the piece. You know, it's our job to really hold the integrity of the work. So zooming out to what was happening globally in 2015, Je suis Charlie became a clarion call, really of solidarity after the first Paris attack, reaching 1.5 million hashtags per day. we were also seeing images like this. So once you've seen this image, you can't really unsee it. A Syrian refugee landing on the shores of Lesbos, praying, really, having reached safety. Here, dollar bills were thrown at Sepp Blatter after the FIFA boss was fending off corruption allegations. I found that kind of hilarious. Do you need any more money? And NASA found evidence of flowing water on Mars 27th of September of this year. So these dark, narrow streaks were found to have been left by briny water on the surface. So jumping forward again, going through all of my photos, which you're very welcome to do. You know, if you've got any thoughts that are coming up or any memories that are coming up, share them to the WhatsApp group. I was realizing that I was actually capturing things all the time that were alternative data visualizations, really. So, of course, a sunrise and a sunset is a data visualization in itself. This is a project that we explored this theme in the light calendars. It's actually a project which ran for 10 years. So we created data visualizations which effectively told the story of the light and dark from London's perspective every year. And here you can see a data visualization of a year's worth of data that we created. So the line that's drawing up there is basically January the 1st, and as the line turns white, that's the sunrise, and as it turns black again, that's the sunset, and you can see the days getting longer as we go through into the summer months and back into the autumn. And really what we were trying to do here was draw your attention to the spectacular natural occurrence of a sunrise and a sunset through this artwork. Various other things I was capturing from my stream, you know, my bulletproof coffee with coconut oil in it, which again is a data visualization. Also this beautiful, beautiful dawn chorus, which I captured. I'm not sure if you can hear the sound of this or not. Is the sound on? It's this kind of amazing occurrence that happens all around the globe, you know, all of the time, and I just was really inspired by this. And it was also the first year that we planted a vegetable patch in our garden. So 2017, an amazing thing happened. We actually had some resource available in the studio, and I reached out to a few of our partners that we hadn't worked with for a while, and I said, if you want some free work doing, just look on your to-do list and just let me know what I can help with. And a team, a self-described Black Ops design team from Nike came back to me, and they actually said, if you're serious about this free work, David, then yes, we do have a project for you. It's actually the future of Nike's retail concept. And what they'd seen was the project going on within Nike by a much bigger group, and they really wanted support to bring about something of a hostile takeover of the project. They'd seen that it was going wrong. So they asked for our support in bringing the brand and the tone of voice to life. Now I'm going to share a video with you now, which is that sprint piece of work in the first 2 weeks that we did for free. This is basically the video that we created. Can we turn it up? Yay! Okay, so I'm glad we got there. So that was a piece of work that we did that basically brought the tone of voice of the House of Innovation to life. We often use moving image and animation to sort of capture the essence of that sort of thing. Now, what's fascinating is what hit the consumer or the audience 9 months after that was created was almost exactly the same, which almost never happens. Usually, there's a lot of changes between the beginning point and the end. And I think in part it was because of the way that this sort of hostile takeover of the project came about. It was something of a turning point from our perspective in the work that we were doing with Nike, because it was really reframing the truth of what Nike is, which is pushing at human potential. It's innovation that brings about the pushing forward of human potential. And that's the truth of it. The science, the realness, the ruggedness of that piece is really the truth. You don't need to kind of be too Hollywood when you're presenting these things. I think the most authentic truth is what we always try and capture. And if you're Nike and you're creating a football boot that takes hundreds of prototypes in order to get to the final piece, that's the story, the prototypes. You don't need to make the football boot into a serpent at the end of the thing. So what this really taught me is that, free work can pay off. This turned into the biggest project that we've ever done by far. So we delivered all of the moving and static content for the Shanghai and the New York stores. We also, to this day, have been bringing campaigns to life in those stores. And it's just been the most phenomenal project, really. Our team grew. That two-man Black Ops team at Nike grew to a team of about 50 pretty much overnight. And what it taught us really is that I think if you see a problem, you can make it yours. You can change the world or your world. It's your responsibility to be able to see problems, spot them as designers, and be able to go about actively kind of changing the course or the direction of them. So if we zoom out this year, there was basically confrontations between white nationalists and the alt-right, as you can see here, exchanging insults with counter-protesters. This got a lot more violent. This is in Charlottesville, Virginia. In August of that year, we actually went to Charlottesville, Virginia a couple of years after this because we were working with the Seraphic group. So we've been to this place. This man became the president of France. This man became the president of somewhere else. This man's watching a spacecraft go off, I think. No, it's actually quite hideous and quite scary to think that he's watching a missile that carries nuclear arms effectively take off here. There was also this year in August, the Great American Eclipse, it was called, which was so dubbed because it was mainly viewed from the American kind of regions. Now, what's fascinating about this is through that telescope, it looks like this, of course. Isn't the universe so abundantly creative and giving? A funny story, this year, this summer that's just passed, I actually bought a telescope myself, and I asked my second son, Tom, who you're about to meet in a second, if he'd like to look through the telescope to see the moon, and he said, no, I'm scared of heights, which I thought was quite amusing. So I mentioned that you would meet Tom. So this was a year that with our two boys, Laura and myself, went on an amazing trip to Tokyo and then across Australia and back via Bali. And it was an amazing trip, but I was capturing images like this, of course, and when you actually look at the globe, there's almost not 1 inch of it that is untouched by human activity. I told you to meet Tom. Here he is on the right with John in the center. And I started this year hand balancing. I want to just touch on hand balancing and why I love it. It's become really a big passion of mine. I think in some ways it's a sort of return to innocence. It gives me a childlike joy. I wonder what gives you childlike joy. I think it's quite important to have it in your life. I think that you sort of tune in a very profound way when you're balancing upside down, to your hands and your shoulders, but also you tune into the different forces that you can't see but are felt, like gravity, that perfect force which is keeping you sat in your chairs right now. Any less and you'd float away, any more and you'd just be squashed. And I think for me, it really is moments of calm that I find my true creativity in. So I asked you where your true creativity comes from. For me, this is the meditation that I find that space to create from. Here's John discovering bubbles. Here's Tom discovering bubbles. This same year, I visited the Jet Propulsion Lab. So this is NASA's headquarters in Pasadena, which is quite a remarkable place, and it was directly linked to the project that we created that I showed you up front. So I visited possibly one of the coolest design studios on the planet there, called simply The Studio. They're responsible for artistic expressions of all of the open source data that NASA and Jet Propulsion Lab create. And the facility is just phenomenal. I really, really enjoyed going and seeing the double of the Voyager and seeing actual spacecraft being built. So this is a big vacuum-sealed warehouse. I was told off by the security for taking this image and asked to leave quite shortly afterwards, but I was glad that I have it for you. So the following year, 2019 we're in now, we started working for the Jet Propulsion Lab. 2 years after I'd visited the headquarters, we were invited to undertake a project for the GRACE satellite mission. GRACE stands for Gravity Recovery and Climate Experiment. So in 2002, 2 satellites were sent up by the Jet Propulsion Lab, and it was their job basically to act as a monitor of the different water levels and types across our planet. And in 2017, those 2 satellites were coming to the end of their life. And in 2018, they were sending up 2 more, which was called the GRACE FO, or Follow On Mission. And really, it was our job to give voice and expression to the GRACE FO mission. So we created an art installation. You can see a small illustration of it here, but basically we were going to take the shape of the 2 satellites and create an installation that would sit in the lobby of the Jet Propulsion Lab headquarters. And the job was really to give voice to GRACE, be able to communicate all of the data that's being sent down by the satellites, and it had to have an audience of everything from school children to senators. So you can see here the way that the satellites actually move around the globe. To go into just a little bit more detail as to how they work, they're 200 kilometers apart, and basically the very subtle changes in gravitational pull against the surface of the Earth show us which different types and water content that we have. 78% of fresh water is groundwater. All the water in rivers and lakes makes up 4%. Everything else is groundwater. So GRACE really acts like a scale of how that works. So I just want to tell you a bit more about the headquarters, because it blew my mind to really work with these guys and go there. This is it. It was built in the hills, quite far away from Los Angeles, in the 60s, because they had to set off explosions. But obviously, Los Angeles has grown so big now, it's actually encroaching on the headquarters. And when you go there, you go to mission control. You can see information being sent back from the spaceship's live feed, which blows my mind completely. And I also got to see in the car park the double of this, which is a Martian rover, which is continually on the surface and picking up samples and monitoring them. What's interesting, if you don't know, the Jet Propulsion Lab is all unmanned spacecraft. NASA is all manned spacecraft. Jet Propulsion Lab is much older. It was initiated in the 30s. NASA's a lot newer, and there's a sibling rivalry between the two, because NASA's the kind of superstar, but Jet Propulsion Lab was around far before. So an interesting, cheeky thing, this is a slight segue, but I wanted to share with you. Jet Propulsion Lab actually put in Morse code, JPL, into the wheel of this Martian rover. So you can see right now, as it's up there, it's actually tagging JPL across the Martian surface. Now, we've also been a bit cheeky like this, hiding an AMP in the side of Cristiano Ronaldo's football boot in dazzle camouflage the year before. So onto the GRACE mission and our project. We basically give voice to the GRACE mission by creating a series of typography and language and a way of actually decoding the information that was being sent down from the satellites. It was a real labor of love. We crafted all of the communication and sampled many iterations of this before we got to the final piece. And here is the final installation, which if you go to JPL, you'd be able to see. Water doesn't go anywhere. There's always 100% of water that's ever been on Earth. Sometimes it's ice, sometimes it's seawater or fresh water or clouds, but it doesn't go anywhere. So here you can see in our installation, you start off zoomed out over a particular area of the planet. Then we zoom in to see that month's chosen data. Freshwater drop-off into the sea from ice is happening quicker than ever. When we were in LA working on this project, one of the local guys we were working with said that there was just 2 days of rainwater last year. Falling groundwater levels in Germany also pose a significant threat, as 70% of your drinking water here is sourced from groundwater. So helping to create this installation really brought it home to us. What started as a passion project with our Spectra really led to this, working with new friends on a project that's incredibly important about understanding how our planet is changing. We started to align with others really through this project, and it's been a very humbling thing to be part of. So, globally, let's zoom out. In 2019, you can see here as firefighters were dousing the flames billowing from Notre Dame in Paris. This is April 15th. Also, in April, the first image ever of a black hole. So this is something that's been hypothesized for a very, very long time, but we're only in 2019 able to actually create images of it. There's 3 different types of black hole. This is the supermassive type, and it sits at the center of our galaxy, the Milky Way. It was stitched together by the Event Horizon telescope after 5 nights of simultaneous capture around the globe. Robert Mueller this year released a 400-page report on Russian interference in the 2016 US election. Also what started as basically never-ending fires across the rainforest in the Amazon, which is 70,000 by August of this year. And then protests in Hong Kong grew into a sweeping student-led unrest across the territory. And after being touted as a healthier alternative to smoking, cigarettes, vaping was linked to killing dozens of deaths around the US. So let's move forward. 2019, in my personal life, I was making sushi. I made some A&P sushi here. John was discovering new things all of the time. This is him in an inflatable slide, enjoying life. This is me enjoying life as well with my hand balancing. This is me and Tom. Hello, Tom. This is me and John actually going to the first lockdown. This is in the 15th of April of this year. And this was basically Extinction Rebellion's, I think it was the 3rd uprising they'd ever undertaken, but it was the 2nd really biggest one where they were locking down parts of the London capital. So you can imagine my surprise. I took in my son, I ascended the staircase at Oxford Circus, and as I came up, I was greeted with images like this. And they'd basically locked down Oxford Circus, but not just there, Parliament Square, Waterloo Bridge, various other parts of London, and it stayed like this for 2 weeks. They work on the premise that 3.5% of a population or a community is all you really need in order to be able to create the cascade effects and bring about change. But really, you may not agree with everything that Extinction Rebellion do, but they've raised a very important question, which is around climate change. And it was the first time that I personally, since I'd understood what was happening to our planet and was experiencing climate grief, started to think, come on, humans, we've got this. We can do this. Now, I think what they're doing is really ringing an alarm bell, a very important alarm bell, that the planet is screaming at us to stop. But are we listening? That's really the biggest question. I want to tell you a bit about a project that we did in a naming and branding exercise for an amazing data rights agency called AWO. It was a collaboration with a poet called Tom Sharp. Data law and technology is moving so fast that laws can't really keep up, and AWO is an agency with a mission to defend and extend human rights. It's at the nexus of data, technology, and policy. What power knows and what power wants to do with what it knows is a defining issue of our time. This that you see here is a part of our workshop with the team. So basically, we projected all of the content onto a screen and we picked the narrative through it, which is kind of like a metaphor for the process that lawyers undertake. We knew that language was going to be paramount, and that's why we collaborated with a friend, and longtime collaborator, Tom Sharp. He put us onto this poem, which is called All Watched Over by Machines of Loving Grace. It was written in 1967 by Richard Brautigan, and it's really about the fusing of humanity with technology. There's 2 ways to read this poem. It's either about how we and computers will one day live in harmony, or it's a dystopian future where machines are ruling us. But either way, it sparks a very interesting conversation for a data rights agency. Using the language of data and concrete poetry, combined with this imaginative writing, we created a very simple brand, redacting the name effectively into this letter spacing. So AWO sounds very big and powerful, but the spacing begs the question as to what's missing, and of course starts the story of where the brand come from. And then we had amazing poems that were written. This is very unusual behavior for a legal entity, of course, but beautiful poems such as think of your data as sunbeams or a meandering river or an egg. This project was really a number of things that went right for us. It was an adventurous client that was willing to do something very purposeful with their proposition. It was also an amazing opportunity to collaborate with the poet and the legal entity. And what I love about it is that collaboration. So back at the start of the last century, there would have been no siloing between, science and art and philosophy. It would be very appropriate for an artist to pick up a philosophy or from scientists and vice versa. And this was a collaboration between a design studio, a poet, and a legal entity. It won us lots and lots of awards, but has been incredibly successful for AWO, who continue to do very important work and grow. So 2020 was also a very big year for our agency. We became a B Corporation. B Corporations are a movement of organizations that consider a triple bottom line. So they consider people and planet as well as profit. I went to a B Corporation event and heard this amazing quote. Designers who aren't considering the impact of their work on the planet should be stripped of the title creative. Because if the work you do damages our world in any way, are you really a creator or are you a destroyer? Very powerful language that I think we should all consider. We also started our living business plan this year, so this ecosystem of elements that really provides harmony and balance to the studio rather than perpetual growth. And we also started our podcast that Peter mentioned at the start. I'd encourage you to listen to these conversations. They are there to inspire radical action. This was the start of lockdown, which was a weird time, wasn't it? So this is Paris, neighbors talking to each other from their balconies in Paris. And then we can see in Johannesburg a slightly different type of image here in South Africa. This was basically people looking from their balconies at the police enforcing the lockdown on the streets below. This is workers wearing personal protective equipment, burying bodies in Hart Island in the Bronx in April of 2020. Here, motorists were ordered to the ground after basically all of the protests in Minneapolis after the death of George Floyd. And what you see here on the top left is an image of the Muslim pilgrims to the Kaaba as they keep social distancing. Very, very surreal images that we're starting to witness. And here a parkour runner jumps on a railway bridge with Frankfurt's business district in the background. So what was going on in my personal life? Well, here's my third child, Minnie. Here she is hiding in a swimming pool locker. She didn't just hide in there, she actually got herself trapped in our car. At one point, I was trying to encourage her to unlock the car for about half an hour before calling the heroes of the fire brigades. They came, there they are, speaking to her in the car. Minnie was saved. Now notice the heroes of the fire brigade are not videoing their actions, they're just going about their heroic work. I was very thankful for them. My hand balancing continued to evolve. I'm on bars now. My line isn't quite straight, but I'm starting to really get some height and try to address that banana shape. There's Minnie also hand balancing with me. A very strange thing happened on this holiday that you can see in Middle England with my family. I discovered that a sheep had been trapped in a badger hole, and I wanted to save it, but I wanted to film myself. Now, my wife was simultaneously pissed off with me and impressed. She said heroes do not know they're heroes. Heroes just go about their heroic action. I don't know, I'm torn. I'm so glad I've got that video. But she's right. The narrative of all Disney films is heroes that don't yet know that they are heroes. I think it's very important to note that. 2021, we're getting closer. We were invited to take part in a collaborative project where you would basically come up with ideas designs for socially distant cities, which sounds quite hideous, doesn't it? But still, very close to our studio in London, we have Hackney Marshes, which has got over 50 full-size football pitches that hadn't really been used during the lockdown. So we created a Keep Your Distance Football League. This is a project that was worked on predominantly by Nigel Cottier, who's got a book out, actually. It's sold out. Fascinating book. He's called Process Pattern, if you want to try and get hold of his book. We created this amazing project that was all about basically football that could maintain socially distanced rules, and we really went to town bringing it to life. We created a brand around it and kit, and it was all self-initiated, but it was a really fascinating project. Now, we basically got the opportunity to bring this to life in the real world by a collaboration with Nike. We'd created the Move to Zero campaign prior to this, and then we got the opportunity to actually go to Belgrade. This is a place in Serbia that has got a very sorry-looking basketball court in a community area. Basically, we were invited to create a campaign that would ask locals to donate 20,000 unwanted shoes that were then used to breathe life back into this play area and into the community. So renovating this rundown area called Block 7, which is Block 70, which is an old town part of Belgrade. We created the whole campaign. We gathered all of the shoes and worked very closely with Nike and all the super graphics and the application and design of the space. And here it is. It's quite a remarkable piece of work I'm very, very proud of, because it brings together three things that are very dear to us as a studio. One is community. Two is the sense of play, but also planting seeds for the future. You know, what can you do now? This project has effectively given opportunity to, tap into untapped, energy in the area, whether it be bringing to life athletes or addressing some of the social issues that may have been there. It's over to them. But I really love the fact that at least we've potentially unlocked some of the potential within the area. What was happening globally? Well, the GameStop short squeeze. I'm fascinated by corporate and boardroom activism. In just 6 months, the stock prices went from $5 to $350 at its peak. In the days following that peak, there was short sellers that lost $26 billion in the squeeze. Fascinating. America withdrew from Afghanistan. There was a billionaire space race. Musk, Bezos, and Branson. Twitter permanently banned Donald Trump, which is fascinating, isn't it, that a president would be using social media in that way and then get cancelled. Mexico offered asylum to Julian Assange after UK judges rejected the US's request to extradite him. He's just got married last month. Congratulations, Julian. And what was happening in my personal life? We're getting very close to the final point here. We're getting up to the kind of ground zero of 2022. Minnie is nearly 3 years old. Tom continues to advance. He is learning how to ride a bike. This is where him and John cycled around in the school hall. I'm actually working with a personal trainer who annotates data visualizations over my hand balancing, and I'm getting really advanced. I can now do moves like this and like this. Now, I think I annoy people with my hand balancing, and Matt Humphrey, one of my friends, said, yeah, whatever, David, that's highly impressive, but check this shit out. Thank you, Matt Humphrey. So where has all of this been leading us? It's all leading to now, 2022. Our world is chaotic. There's no escaping the noise and the tragedy and the conflict. Or so it seems. And yet there is a way. There is a way to access a more peaceful state and for us to navigate these times. And for us to do that takes great courage, to fully surrender. As you see, the present moment is the only moment that we ever have. And so I invite you all, please, to take a deep breath in with me now. And exhale. Please take a big, deep breath in with me now. And exhale. And as you do, I'd just like you to put to one side any thoughts and feelings and emotions that may have come up during the presentation. Put your phones to one side. In this place of complete surrender, there's no future and there's no past. It's actually the only moment that we ever have. This is the place where all new ideas, all creation, everything that is birthed into the world emanates from this place. The world of the future will be made of the thoughts that we have now, just as the world that we're living in was made from people's thoughts in the past. And so we can create silence and space through our breath, and we have this incredible opportunity to bring new thoughts, new inspiration, new ideas on how our world can be, and for us to become stewards of a world that we're proud to gift to our daughters and our sons and our future generations. So I ask you, please don't let the chaos of the world and the noise distract you. Accept yourself, accept the challenge ahead of us, and allow whatever truth and magic and creativity and purpose and passion is within you. This is our time to reimagine. This is our moment. Today is the time we have to create a new world. So I'd like us to rejoice, celebrate the opportunity that we have that no other group of humans has ever had. This is a rallying cry to come together and create a more beautiful world. Everything around us is information. And what's interesting is it's in formation. Everything adds to our lives and the everyday chaos. I've just shared a few strands of the journey, of our globe and of our agency and my personal life. But any one of us could have presented this presentation through their own lens. And where has it all been leading us? I thank you for being present at this tipping point of humanity. If we take a moment to really see, a moment to really feel how today has impacted our bodies, feel how it's impacted our minds. And if we just breathe, please do not stop breathing or we will be in trouble. But just take a moment to imagine our future worlds. Imagine a world that you want to commit to with clarity in the next 7 years, 104 days. Breathe it, feel it. If you could use your experience and skills for the betterment of the world, what would you choose to do? If you had all of the resources in the world and you could choose any project, design, or anything else, what would it be? What pain and suffering do you see in the world that your heart is compelled to respond to? From today, what could you do differently that would impact the world in a positive way? In closing, I just want to ask, what are you feeling called to do but frightened to take the leap to do? And what's the worst thing that could happen if you did take that leap? What actions can we take now that would have a positive impact on the next 7 generations? Imagine 7 years, 104 days from now, you've started or transformed your career and your work has contributed to a better world. Finally, my only point I really want to ask you to respond to, and what I've been building to, is to make a commitment to the future. I'd like you to write into the WhatsApp group, if you will, please, I and your name. You can do this in German or English, whatever's most comfortable. Would in the next 7 years commit to something with focus and intention. Please post it onto the group. I, David, would in the next 7 years commit to enabling the integrity of tomorrow. That's my commitment. Now, I hope you've enjoyed my presentation. I do thank you. I know it's been a long day, and I thank you for staying until the end. We're going to be running a workshop where we're going to go deeper into commitments to the future tomorrow. So if you'd like to join us, I'd love to go a lot deeper then. But until tomorrow, thank you very much for your time.
It was a long day, but still, thanks a lot for this ride. I've seen some of the material before, and it's really a lot of content into that. Just come a bit here. So, are there any questions before I ask one? Because it's really late. Maybe you're tired, or everyone wants to go to the party. We as well.
Yeah.
But are there any questions? Okay. Not yet. I put one down. Can't find it here. A bit. Yeah. The collaboration. I had the impression, especially when you were talking about working with poets, or can you tell a little bit about how important? Because you're about like 30 people. I've looked up on yourself.
We are, yeah.
So there's a lot of work, and 30 people. It's not a very small agency, but it's not a huge agency.
Yeah.
So how do you choose that kind of collaboration, coming up with working with a poet for actually a legal institution?
Yeah. Well, I think we try and look what is not the accepted norm. You know, it's not normal for a poet to work on a legal entity. And I think that we try and shake things up, basically, see what would be the grit in the oyster. But we're very, very inspired by the whole world of the creative sector, really, and we collaborate a lot with people like Fields and digital agencies all the time, actually, but also spatial, kind of artistic. Everything inspires us. I think that the point I've made today is that everything is really interconnected, and I do love the idea that the solutions to the future are going to be about collaboration and diversity of thought. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you meet people or you collaborate with people, and they fundamentally change your way of seeing yourself and the world around you. And I think we are always looking for the lens that's going to take us to a place that we couldn't possibly ourselves. And on that project, it was very much Tom Sharp and his genius that was able to take the language to a place that really no other legal entity has ever explored, I don't think.
Yeah, yeah, that was a beautiful piece of work. Any questions from the audience? You're all very brave. It was a long day. So we can understand that maybe everyone is a bit tired. Last one, Nike. I think it's very important that big companies, who of course do a lot of things not right, start to do things right, and like projects like you did. But for instance, with Nike, you had this case where they actually were destroying new shoes. There was like a big press case here in Germany as well, because they pretended to do like a recycling thing. And some journalists found out that it actually new material, that they were just shredding and nothing was happening there. Do you address that kind of issues with your clients, because you have big corporate clients? How does that work?
Yeah, we try and be we're independent. So, we are able to be a very honest and authentic sounding board from an external perspective, because I think we've built up a trust with Nike, particularly over the years. We've been working with them for 15 years, so we can be very honest about what we see. I think, in truth, we're all bound up in capitalist systems that are detrimental, and we're trying to find our way out of it in so many different ways individually and, in terms of corporations and brands, and we need to make changes very, very quickly. And I think it will be independent, external sounding boards that really help people change. You can't. It's harder to change the machine from the inside. I think you can kind of change it from an external perspective. So we're very honest, and I think we get a lot of respect both ways for the honesty that we have around everything that we see and feel.
Yeah.